So lots of knowledge there from Jared, Kevin. What are your initial reactions off of some of the breakdowns and what you expect to see from the Jags this weekend?
I think this is the ultimate trap game. I mean, This is going back to the EJ Manuel days where the Bills just always seem to lay that egg against Jacksonville. So I really hope that doesn't come to fruition because, as we talked about with Jared, I think the Jaguars are going to be pretty desperate because you do not want to go to 0-3 with the Houston Texans looming in the near future. That is, I think Jared said it, it's like a death trap. So I think we're going to get the best version of Jacksonville.
Think you are. I think Ingram's key to this is stupid, is silly, but like he's a key beater of what I think the Bills defense does. And the Bills have had some issues a little bit with Jonnu Smith. They didn't care about it because they were too busy guarding their actual skill players. But Jonnu Smith, they played well against Trey McBride, to your point earlier. So we'll see with Evan Ingram. Jacksonville doesn't need to play perfect football. They just need to play really good football, control the game, watch what Arizona did in the first half, kind of put their version of that with the ball control. And they don't need to score 34 points necessarily, but they do need to do what Arizona did in the first half, control the ball, get some type of early turnover to at least give yourself a chance to be up 7, 10, 14 against Josh Allen. Because if you're not, it's going to be a long day. But Kevin, on the Bills side, though, that man defense would scare the heck out of me if I'm Jacksonville. They need to get out of that. Ultimately, it's been a major problem. The only benefit you have to that cover one defense is if you bring the heat like we saw Miami try to do in the playoffs with the cover zero blitzes. Maybe there's a chance there, but Josh Allen has a positive EPA against the blitz and against pressure. It's going to be a long day, man. They got to hope that Josh Allen can't run with that left hand because it's going to be there. They may bait Josh to run because if you're running a cover one and a lot of man-to-man, going to be so many rushing lanes. Josh has got to take it. It's one of the games against this defense I want to see him run. That may not be the case against Houston next week, but when it comes to in Buffalo against the Jags, against man defense, all of those things combined equal like we need Josh Allen's legs.
I agree, but I think that I want to see Josh Allen's arm outshine everything else this week because, we talked about this with Jared and I actually tweeted it while we were talking here. So look at these stats. The Jaguars' defensive ranks, they are 30th against the pass, averaging almost 250 yards per game. They are 11th against the run and 22nd total. So if I'm the Bills, I'm trying to open up the passing game because, as I noted here, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, and Keon Coleman only have 20 targets combined so far this season. Curtis Samuel, Mac Hollins, and MVS only have 10. So the Bills have been, maybe I shouldn't say run heavy, but I believe they have run 57% of the time. Josh Allen has only dropped back 42 times. And as we noted, Josh only ran twice against the Dolphins for 2 yards. So I think this is a week where you can kind of test that weakened Jaguars secondary. Ronald Darby's their CB1. Tyson Campbell's out. They're banged up back there. Andrew Wingard, we talked about him with Jared. I really think that this is a week where Joe Brady can try to open things up a bit, try to get Kincaid going, try to get Coleman going. Maybe we can see a little bit more from Curtis Samuel. I thought we were going to get a bigger game from him last week in Miami. We ultimately didn't need it. James Cook had a great game, but I just think that this is a week where maybe Josh can push the ball down the field a little bit more.
There you have it. We'll see. It's all coverage dependent, man. Like if they clog up the middle of the field to take away those throws, because they know they're seeing Josh Allen and are baiting Josh to run. That's my prediction. Of course, I want to see Josh's arm. I'm like 100%. But I'm just factoring in their defense of playing a lot of that strong front four football with a really good coverage that they try to play. And then instead of focusing in on making sure Josh doesn't run, taking away some of the crossers and try their best to double Samuel or Shakir. More important, probably Shakir right now. Some of those lanes could be clogged in wide open running lane. So it's going to be on the Bills to see if Josh is too committed to throwing. I don't want to see turnovers. Where if they can get him to run the ball at least early to get him out of that, that's my goal. And then to dominate in the second half through the air. That's kind of what I'm seeing. But hey, maybe they come out and play that cover 2 high shell. None of this would matter. I don't know what Ryan Nielsen and the Jags are going to amount to, but they play the amount of man that they cover and they play is going to equal eons of rushing lanes. And if it wasn't for Josh's hand, you could see a 60 to 70 yard rushing day easily.
What about James Cook? Because he has been phenomenal so far. Coming off the AFC Player of the Week, getting in against the Dolphins, we're used to having it be Josh Allen, but this time it was James Cook with his 3 touchdowns, and he's been doing it on the ground and in the air. But as I noted with that stat, the Jaguars are 11th in the NFL in run defense. So I know that they are more susceptible to giving up those longer yards in the air. And to your point, with Josh Allen using his legs, I guess let me ask you this. Would you rather have it be a Josh Allen game or a James Cook game?
Josh Allen game. Like, I just think everything amounts to it being a Josh Allen game between the statistics, the way they play, their defense. They're pretty decent against the run. If they don't play a lot of two cover, like where the Bills haven't been wildly successful running the ball, according to EPA, they've been wildly successful against Josh Allen making the right read in a cover two high shell to giving the ball to James Cook. James Cook hasn't made exceptional plays that he shouldn't have been making. Josh Allen's making the right read in a cover two high shell and giving James Cook the best ability to succeed, which he has succeeded. So I think that we'll see what happens in week 3 to where how is the data going to result in, is it James Cook? I think with their strong linebackers and their strong front four, so the 6 players that they'll have, and then they're getting decent run stop out of the nickel, kind of like the Bills, that I think the winnable matchup, to your point, is the receivers. And then if they're clogging that up, the final winnable matchup is definitely Josh Allen running. They won't have an answer to it playing man. There's just not going to be anybody there. And if Josh makes one man miss, you're talking about 40-yard chunk plays because it's one-on-one with a free safety trying to tackle Josh Allen 10 yards, 15 yards down the field, which has not had a lot of success in this league right now. He's jumped over a majority of them. So not that he's going to do that this weekend, but there's definitely going to be some challenges for Jacksonville's defense. Maybe they just come out and run a cover 2 high shell, make the Bills nickel and dime them. That's what I would do. Ultimately, if I was a defensive coordinator against Mahomes or Allen, and a lot of times they will be successful, and a lot of times, sometimes they won't. But I'm running a cover 2 high shell. I'm making you make James Cook be useful. I have good linebacking play. That's how I would play the Bills. Make Josh get bored, which he hasn't been bored in a while. He's played really good football. But I'm going to hope that he gets bored and tries to fit in a throw against a cover 2 high shell, against a honey pot or a honey hole that he shouldn't be throwing. But yeah, I mean, this could make sense too. More Ray Davis against the Jags front four. It makes sense on a matchup. Maybe that's not true, but on paper, it could make sense too. So we'll see how that all amounts to everything.
I was just saying on the flip side, I was going to talk about the Bills' defensive game plan. Is that where you were going?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So I just want to say real quick, let me reiterate because I talked about this with Jared. But I think, first of all, it starts up front. If Greg Rousseau and Von Miller can continue to get pressure, because the Jaguars' offensive line is weakened this year. They're just very underwhelming. They're not performing that well. Old friend Mitch Morse. So if the Bills can start by winning up front, I think that's huge because they are weakened across the middle with no Milano, no Bernard, no Taron Johnson. McDermott has already ruled those guys out. Yep. So you're going to be rocking with Dorian Williams, Balin Spector, Jamarcus Ingram playing some dime packages, maybe Cam Lewis in the slot. Maybe we get a little bit of Nicholas Morrow. So I think that the Bills are pretty solid on that defensive line and on the back end because I really like what I've seen from Rasul Douglas and Christian Benford. So I think that they will be able to, maybe I shouldn't say lock up Brian Thomas Jr. and Gabe Davis, but I think that Douglas has the experience over BTJ and Benford knows all of Gabe Davis's tricks or lack thereof because he's a one-trick pony. So I think they can take away that. My key to the game here for the Bills defense is take away the middle of the field, specifically with Christian Kirk, because he could be Trevor Lawrence's favorite target. He only has 2 catches for 29 yards so far on the young season, and this could be the game where Press Taylor really tries to amp him up and get him going. I'll throw Travis Etienne in there too with those swing passes. So you just have to make sure that you can get out, cover those flats, cover the middle of the field, and I think you'll be okay.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the Bills have done a really good job at confusing their opponents. They disguise coverage at the top of the league. To Jared's point earlier, he mentioned the Jags disguising coverage. Right now, they're not doing a good job at it. They're bottom 2 in disguising coverages. They're running too much man. They're running too much cover 1, where the Bills will notice that. They're either running cover 1 or they're in a 2 high shell. Like they've been running literally 2 formations defensively. So that's not going to be too confusing for a top end quarterback. Maybe they just thought that was the best way to confuse Deshaun Watson. I don't know. But ultimately, when it comes from a Bills perspective defensively, they're going to run a lot of that dime. They're definitely going to put a precedent on Kevin attacking those tackles. I put it up on the screen earlier. They stink. They've played some pretty bad football. They need to play much better, and they're capable of it possibly. And if they do, Jacksonville has a better chance offensively. If they keep playing like they have been, Rousseau and Von Miller actually get some statistics in this game. And then something that's beaten the Bills a little bit so far is that quarterback run. they usually are pretty good against it. Kyler Murray had a good success against it. And then so did a little bit Tua, normally not running, but some of their most successful plays were 2 or 3 Tua runs in the game, which you don't see too often. One, unfortunately, he got hurt on, but it was still a really good play by Tua to see it and get yards and to fight for his team. So when you look at it from that perspective, Trevor Lawrence has had some big runs. He's sneaky athletic. Bills have to watch that unfold. But when it comes to a coverage standpoint, I think they're going to be in good position. The Bills know Gabe Davis. They've done really well against Marvin Harrison Jr., and I expect that to continue to a similar coverage against Brian Thomas Jr. They know what Gabe Davis's pros and cons are, so I'm not too worried there. They need to get Christian Kirk going. If they can't, I just don't see where the weapon would come in for the Jags to win, especially if Ingram is out. Brenton Strange is a serviceable tight end, backup tight end. He is pretty decent, a solid number 2 tight end in this league. But behind that, they're running out, Parker Washington and Devin Duvernay and Tim Jones. There's not a ton there. And behind Etienne, if Bigsby can't go, it's Dearness Johnson. So there's not a lot of weapons. Very top heavy, this roster. Kind of reminds me of those old Bills rosters that were really, really top heavy. They didn't have too much to go. So that's where we're at, Kevin. What are any final takeaways from these matchups?
I was going to say, I'll leave you with this. I said it before. I'll say it again. Through the first 2 weeks, the Bills had held Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Waddle to under 100 yards combined. So, yeah, the Jaguars present a new challenge. We're going to see a desperate Jaguars team. They don't want to fall to 0-3, and it's that classic Jacksonville trap game. But that stat right there should give you all the confidence in the world going into Monday Night Football.